Uncle Tommy Robinson, the saviour, the hero, the man who sticks up to the man, the defender of the innocent English lamb from the jaws of the evil wolves. He may not be well spoken, but he's always been the golden boy of the reactionary working class. Alas, this is all a fraud. Tommy Robinson is perhaps the greatest obstacle in the way of those who want real change. This is Tommy Robinson, the great imposter of the British right. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this country, like any country, has problems, serious problems. We are subjected to a stagflationary squeeze, a rising crime rate, despite statistical trickery suggesting otherwise, the slow death of our communities, our high streets and our culture, and the abhorrent defilement of our daughters, all of which can largely be blamed on mass immigration. So it's no wonder that from time to time the public outrage boils over. All it takes is another news story from hell for the British public to say no more. And the consequences of these outbursts are becoming increasingly more horrific. But, as has been the case many times, exactly as things are hotting up, who is there like a poorly conceived plot device if not Tommy Robinson? Exactly as things are hotting up, Tommy will come along, he'll set a date, he'll have a protest, he'll go on some big stand in a public square in London, and the people will follow.
We're putting on a concert, we're putting on a festival, your country needs you.
In doing so, they do not riot, they are told to be calm, collected and peaceful, and most abide.
Do you know how important it is that we don't allow any trouble? We don't want any clashes with opposition.
And they have their publicity stunt, it all goes well, everyone's happy, and they all go home and, for the most part, forget about why they're even there in the first place.
The only problem we have here, we need more screens. And then we're going to have a 46-metre screen that's going to be higher than the cenotaph.
At the very least, the anger is dissipated every time, and soon after that, Tommy Robinson just goes home. He, maybe he maintains a social media presence, but for the most part, he just disappears off everyone's radar for a while. Through this process, there was real anti-establishment, anti-regime energy. Like, the people were angry. I mean, their daughters had been defiled or stabbed or worse, or, some horrible stuff has happened to our people. The people were rightfully outraged, and instead of doing anything serious or, particularly radical, it might actually scare the regime, they just go to this protest, then go home. Nothing happens. Tommy comes along and he completely sucks the oxygen out of every movement. Sure, maybe you could say in the past he was fueling the fire. He was, after all, exposing the grooming gangs through his documentaries. But, eventually those would have been covered anyway. It's something that's impossible to hide. And, what changes it actually achieved? As far as I can see, things are still going on. Things have not improved. There have been no real measures to stop the grooming gangs. We're having more immigration and more immigration. So, what has it achieved? But in any case, you can maybe say that of Tommy Robinson in the past, that he did try to do these things and he, was mildly successful in them. But the Tommy Robinson of today is not fueling the flames, he is sucking the air out of them. The Tommy Robinson protests of today are literally stage managed. They rent a stage, they have, event security, there's all people lined up nicely and, the crowd goes in this area and the speakers are in that area. It's not sporadic, it's not wild, unplanned, a real threat to the government. It's a peaceful protest in a designated area. It's ridiculous to think that that's going to achieve any real change. But of course, the appetite for change is still there. And unfortunately, Tommy Robinson still, gets the money, he gets the donations.
But you, the people, are making it possible through your donations, whether it be £20, £30, £5, your country needs you.
He riles up certain parts of the mob only to bring them to his event rather than, do anything crazy. But nothing actually gets achieved except the enrichment of Tommy Robinson.
And wouldn't you know, as I'm editing, right there, begging for more money. It's like bloody clockwork with this man.
Are the working class any better off for the actions of Tommy Robinson? Are fewer people getting violated? Have the grooming gangs been stopped? Even though, yes, we may have the knowledge of what's going on, without the power to act on the knowledge is almost useless. We're just burdened by these miserable facts. I've spoken before repeatedly about why I think that protest and activism are futile. The protest one is this video and the activism one is this video. But the main point there is that the government doesn't care what you think. They can simply ignore you. And if you think that voting for reform is going to bring about any change, then I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're simply wrong. Nigel Farage is a small L, small d Liberal Democrat. Tice is basically a wet Tory. Much of their funding has come from establishment sources, people like Nick Candy, friend of Tony Blair. And yeah, like at every point, reform has shown itself to not be a right-wing vanguard pushing things further and further right, but instead to be cucking further and further left. The idea that voting them is going to change anything is... I mean, I understand why people think it'll bring about change, but it's simply, it's not going to happen. They don't care for your vote. They don't need your vote. They just set up some, malleable candidate and talk about, I know they've changed the policy now, but net zero migration, which is one foreigner in for every one Englishman out. Like, that doesn't really help us. But still, the people who go on protests, who believe in democracy, think they're getting their voices heard, think they're showing the government their disapproval, but the government doesn't care. They can simply ignore you and will simply ignore you. They won't ignore you if you're actually causing damage. In fact, then they'll try and arrest you and you will face real consequences. But where is Tommy Robinson when his supporters are thrown in jail? When the people who got a bit angry over Southport may have done, admittedly stupid things, but where was he? If I remember correctly, he was off on another holiday. And of course, he and his supporters will claim that he doesn't incite violence and, maybe a legal case could be made for that. But in reality, he does stoke people up. He does get people angry, especially against Muslims. And they are foolish enough to act out in ways that will get them arrested. Meanwhile, what happens to Tommy is, well, he's out of jail now and he usually gets off scot-free. I guarantee you in a year's time, you'll see him in another hot country, having another holiday, just enjoying life whilst the rest of the country suffers. But then, of course, what's it all for? What does Tommy Robinson purportedly believe? What does he advocate for? Well, many of you may be surprised to hear that it's not the blanket deportation of all foreigners. It's actually the reverse. It's the mass importation of Hindu or Sikh foreigners to counteract the Muslim foreigners.
Did you say the Sikh are one of the key groups to break the liberal brainwashing that it's racist to not like radical Islam?
Like, we're welcoming. And when we get a community like the Sikh community who come here, work so hard, so loyal, so faithful, like many Sikhs are probably more British than many other people that are British.
Ultimately, Tommy Robinson's still in favour of mass immigration. He just wants more based Browns to counteract the Muslims. That's why we on the true right call him counter-jihad. He would see the ethnic replacement of this country so long as it meant there were no Muslims here. And you may be fool enough to think that that's a good outcome, but as far as I'm concerned, no. England should be primarily for the English. That should be, an obvious statement. Alas, Tommy Robinson doesn't advocate for that. He's not actually that radical, when on something like mass immigration, he should be. He should be saying, most of them out.
Clear out! Clear them out! You gotta clear them out!
But this is what I mean. Like, Tommy Robinson, as far as I'm concerned, is not, he doesn't sound like a true right-winger. He advocates for more Sikhs, Hindus. It's the same with reform. They don't want, mass deportation, mass remigration. They want one in for one out. It's still mass immigration. It's still destroying us in so many ways. The idea behind it, of course, is that the English won't stand up for themselves. They won't, criticise the Muslims because they're scared to be called racist or anything else like that. But the idea that we need foreigners to fight our battles for us is frankly insulting. We're only scared of being called racist because the state will lock us up. But, rather than fight on that issue and stand for ourselves, stand our ground on our own terms, people like Tommy Robinson tacitly say, keep the law as it is, keep everything as it is, just import foreigners who won't be accused of being racist because they're brown. Like, it's just so insulting. Then, of course, the elephant in the room is Tommy Robinson's bizarre connections and support of Israel. Israel is a foreign country consisting of foreign people who feel no kinship or loyalty to us, the English, despite occasional claims. And why should they? It'd be an absurd thing to expect from them because they're not us. Of course, Israel acts in its own interest. Every nation should act in its own interest. Now, it must be said that Israel goes above and beyond with, wanting policies like flooding Europe with migrants to ethnically make way for Israelis in the Levant. But no, it'd be mad to expect Israel to have any favour towards us. In reality with the Israelis, it's all just the King David Hotel. But yes, if the British right is to make any headway with anything, it must be on our own terms for our own people, without having to resort to allyship with foreign groups. What an insult to us to suggest otherwise. Anyone pushing for Israeli policies is not pushing British policies. It is as simple as that. Yet, Tommy Robinson seems bizarrely obsessed with Israel. I mean, if you look back at the images from one of his somewhat recent protest event thingies, this was what every speaker was looking at. An Israeli flag with the Star of David brought out so it's not being blocked, merged with a Union Jack. This is clearly not in our interest. These are not our people. Like, this shouldn't have to be said. But yes, every speaker was looking at that when they spoke to the British public about British issues. It's absurd. So close, in fact, is Tommy Robinson with Israel that many suggest he's actually just a Mossad asset. Now, whether or not he is, or if he's just a useful idiot for them, is up for debate. I'm not going to make any claim in either direction, but the fact that that's even a concern kind of tells you all you need to know. Then, of course, speaking of that Tommy Robinson event, there are Tommy's various enablers, orbiters, and supporters. I'm not going to name who I'm talking about. If you're familiar with me and my channel, you already know, but influencers with massive channels who know people in the sphere I'm in, so, really should know better, will push for Tommy Robinson, lend him their legitimacy, and even push people like Rupert Lowe to also back Tommy Robinson, despite this being, political suicide. Tommy Robinson is not our friend. He advocates for things that would be to our detriment. He supports the policies of a hostile nation that kind of despises us because they think they're, better than us. Yet, this is the man being pushed by a certain large YouTuber who should know better. And of course, I'm making this video in the aftermath of Tommy Robinson knocking a guy unconscious at a train station. Tommy Robinson is a wild card. He cannot contain himself. He cannot be controlled. We shouldn't be going near anyone with that sort of temperament. We need to be sensible. The right still has a massive image problem. We are painted out by outlets like the BBC, The Guardian, practically every mainstream outlet as raving skinheads. And of course, it's not true. You and I know that it's not true. But that is the image we have, and we should be aware of that, and we should be trying to kind of cultivate a better image. Dress smartly, be sensible. Don't do anything rash. Don't go, shouting at people in the streets. That's not how you rehabilitate an image. And we do want to rehabilitate our image, at least somewhat, because ultimately we need to attract people to our movement so they can help us. But instead, you have people like Tommy Robinson who always get into trouble, always centre of the attention, causing havoc, in the headlines. Like there could have been a stabbing or a grooming gang or whatever. And instead of the story being about that and the tragedy of that, it becomes about Tommy Robinson or the Tommy Robinson March. And like I've said, these don't achieve anything. Watch my two videos again because, protest is futile. Tommy Robinson style activism is futile. But he exists so The Guardian can have a clown figure to point to and say, look at that, that's the far right, look how bloody stupid they are. Tommy Robinson is an ill-mannered, ill-tempered clown. It's not good for us. And look, I understand the outrage. I completely do. When you hear that young girls have been violated by immigrants yet again, or someone's been stabbed, or, whatever horrible thing has happened, of course you feel in yourself a burning rage. Of course you want to do something. Of course you want to put an end to it. And of course, as we all know, the state won't allow you to put an end to it. So you do the closest thing you can, which is, band together, you have your peaceful protest, you show your disapproval, you do anything to feel like you've done something. But the only change we'll really get is that the government will ban pointing knives and replace them with little curved knives. It's no good. It's like, obviously, it's no good. It's no good. But yeah, for what it's worth, real change does not come suddenly. Unless you have your Caesar figure who, is prepared to do, truly violent things to overturn the state, which is not Tommy Robinson, by the way, then things will have to be built up slowly, sensibly, calmly. And so now, as a total coincidence, I shall play you an advert for an event organised by such people, the Witan. In the earliest days of our nation, the herald was sounded for the elite men of England to decide the fate of our country. Such a gathering was known to our forefathers as the Witan. Now, in the ruins of our kingdom, the call has been sounded again. A new, rising elite of steadfast men and women have a new Witan. This is the epicentre of the new British right. We shall hear from the heavyweights of our sphere: Carl Benjamin, Ed Dutton, Howard Cox, Nathan Hood, Nina Power, Catherine Blakelock, Josh Firm, and many more inspired speakers. This Witan will surely be generational. Buy your tickets now at shieldings.com. In closing, there are a few things I'd like to reiterate. Number one is that Tommy Robinson doesn't do anything for the right. He comes along when, anger is at its highest. He arranges his event, people go along, and they go home satisfied that they've, done something, when in reality, nothing changes. And, Tommy gets his donations, he gets his time in the spotlight, and then he goes off on holiday. He's a working class chap, of course, but he seems to have personally done very well out of all of this, despite, everyone else still being worse off, still being subjected to the ills of mass immigration, to the ills of economic decline and the cultural decline, the increase in crime and, what have you. The other thing is that Israel is not your friend. Anyone who supports Israel is not your friend. Israel is a foreign country of foreign people. Their interests should stay contained within their country and not even make the news in this country. I could say about how what they're doing is appalling and this, that and the other, but frankly, in an ideal world, we wouldn't even have to hear about it. We certainly shouldn't be getting involved. The other thing is, in terms of friend and enemy, anyone who supports Tommy Robinson should be considered either a fool or an outright enemy. He is not good for us, as I've outlined in this video. He sucks up the oxygen and the donations and he puts it nowhere. And people who are advocating for him, the obvious boogeyman of the regime, the guy who's wheeled out to make people look bad, why would you support him? You shouldn't be going on protest at all, and you'd be better off keeping your money yourself. Like, really, you'd be better off not protesting at all, not voting at all, and keeping your money for yourselves and your family. Don't give this man your money, and don't listen to the people who say that you should. It doesn't matter that the left wing claim that Tommy Robinson is this evil far-right guy. I mean, they said that about Boris Johnson, they said that about Farage, and, look at what both of those people have said. Boris Johnson let in millions of people, Farage essentially promises to let in millions of people, and Tommy Robinson says that we should bring in more Indians, Punjabis and whatever have you to counteract the Muslims, rather than do it on our own terms as our own people. A lot of the time, left-wing publications will work with the regime to get you to support stooges, boogeymans and people whom the state knows are not a threat, people like Nigel Farage, so that you back them instead of the people who actually could be a challenge to the regime. So yeah, the fact that Hope Not Hate don't like him or The Guardian don't like him shouldn't mean anything to you. They are not friendly publications. In fact, if there was anyone to be a challenge to the regime, you won't have heard of them because they won't be covered by the regime's press outlet. Essentially, why would you publicise your enemy? You wouldn't, which is why they don't. But they do publicise Tommy Robinson. Anyway, I think I've said enough for now. Hopefully it's not been too tangential or whatever have you. I will now go back to my regular schedule of higher effort videos, but in the meantime, stay strong, stay wise, and stop falling for the Tommy Robinsons of the world. Cheerio.